Hey associates, this week's mini lecture is actually a Q&A with a special guest. Preston Blackburn is a machine learning engineer. When he was in college, he studied chemical biological engineering, made some career pivots into more coding and data engineering, and I think you'll really enjoy hearing his responses to some of the frequently asked questions that students and young professionals have. The questions I'm going to ask him did come from prior student submissions, as well as some big questions that I just hear a lot. I'll have the chapters of all the questions kind of linked out below so you can jump to the response you're most interested in. Otherwise, settle in and let's listen to a Q&A with a real working professional in data engineering and coding.
So hey, I'm Preston. Currently I'm working as a machine learning engineer at a data consulting startup. But it's actually the second startup I worked at. Kind of seen another data engineering startup that I work for grow from kind of where we're at now to a little bit over 200 people.
You want to staff our company with a bunch of randos that we've never met?
Yeah, still in the early days, but it's looking good.
And how would you describe your job? What is it that you do?
I'll do everything from kind of like helping out with like some demos, setting up some simple apps, to kind of building out our infrastructure, using some tools like Kubernetes, lots of cloud related tooling, and then obviously kind of the ML portion of it. Large language models, really hot right now, so I've been doing quite a bit with those.
Hey, could you make me an AI Dinesh?
And I'll do some work with some classical data science type machine learning as well.
All right, first question submitted by students. Have you ever needed to use school type writing at work, like a research paper, essay, or something?
Depends what you call school type writing. I've done some stuff like that a long time ago, early in my career when I was working more on the traditional engineering side of things. As a chemical engineer at a oil and gas measurement company, for some of the work we did there, we had to write white papers explaining some of our methodologies and proposing new methods to kind of the board that controls kind of the standards around that.
Would it make more sense if I worked something up and then I got back to you guys?
Recently working more kind of in like tech, I'm not having to write necessarily white papers, but I have written things like blogs and various content for, many of the startups I've worked at, along with, documenting your code. So it kind of depends. I guess it depends what you mean by school type writing.
What class was your favorite? Did you have one?
So I only had a major, I didn't have a minor. Made it simpler for me, I guess. As far as the classes I focused on, coming from the chemical and biological kind of department at CSU, a lot of it was, focused around chemistry and biology, like you might think. Obviously a lot of math, being engineering as well. That's a good question. So I think the name of the class was something along the lines of process dynamics and control. I thought it was a pretty cool class. We did some interesting modeling things with being able to, kind of model these control systems where maybe you're heating something and you need to get it to the temperature as optimally as possible. So I actually like that class a lot. It's kind of related to, maybe that's my first intro to some of the modeling stuff that I do now. Ironically, my least favorite class was numerical methods, which might be the closest to maybe some of the stuff I'm doing now. But yeah, that was probably my favorite.
So, how did you go from being in college to actually getting into the job market?
I'd say slowly. I, you know, didn't really do too much as far as I had like a internship in like college, but it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to be doing. It's kind of been one of our protein crystallography like labs, but yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to do after that. So really, I just applied to like everything that I could, and I probably applied to maybe like I don't know, 200 plus postings.
Dude, I don't even want to know about it.
Before, I actually got my first job, and my first job was actually just a temp job as a technician at a mineralogy pilot plant kind of company. So it was kind of a long journey getting out of college to where I am now. Definitely lots of steps, lots of just kind of incrementally going from like one job to something I wanted to do slightly more, and so on until I'm here.
So you went through a career pivot, kind of going from more lab focused into a much more data focused. What steps would you recommend to take to get a job in the data industry?
Spend some significant effort around like getting into the industry. But some of the steps I would take are, if there's something specific that you want to do, like if it is, say, data engineering, look at some of the tools the data engineers typically use. And then, if some of the really popular tools, for example, Snowflake, have certifications, getting a certification in Snowflake, preferably it's provided by the vendor themselves. I'm not talking about like a Udemy certification. Something that's like proctored and a little bit more rigorous to get is kind of what they'll be looking for. Holds a little bit more weight than just like saying you took like a 2-week sort of class. So yeah, definitely certifications can be good, and also just having your portfolio projects that you can point to around the area, show people that you're interested in that, and prove that you have some of those fundamental skills that you'll need to actually do the job if they hire you. Probably the biggest thing about going from like school to an industry is like there is like a ramp up period of like, okay, I don't know, like hardly anything.
Your inability to stop us from sucking is a failure of leadership.
So like I can actively contribute, commit good code that I feel confident in, and some of that just comes with like time spent with your hands on the keyboard building out those projects.
When working as a data engineer, do you use already collected data or do you gather the data yourself?
So as a consulting company, we're using the client's data, and the data will be in some sort of source system, and they want to get it into their data warehouse. It's kind of like one scenario we'll see. So I guess in that sense, we're kind of gathering the data from their source system to get to the warehouse, but it's not open source data. It's data coming in from their systems, and then we may build pipelines to get that data from point A to point B.
A lot of these data and tech jobs often come with being able to work remotely and some work from home life. But what is one challenge you encounter when working remotely or with people from other places? Tell us about your remote work lifestyle.
Definitely. One challenge can definitely be communication.
Exactly why we need to have clear lines of communication.
I know, Jared, I know.
Because you're not going to randomly run into people in the halls and stuff. So you have to be like a little bit more intentioned about that communication. Maybe take a little bit more initiative than you might with a kind of on-site job. Reach out, make those kind of touch points. Be used to kind of working in like groups and knowing when you need to get help with something, when you need to follow up with someone, and being able to do that, effectively and not, have to continue doing kind of a back and forth to figure out what each other's meaning. Is definitely helpful. So yeah, definitely communication is important there.
clear lines of communication.
I know, Jared, I know.
One thing that you kind of miss out working from home, maybe if you're newer to this is more important, is, being able to kind of observe what other people are doing and how other people's workflows look like. So, being at home, you're not able to, maybe work with that more senior person to get like an idea of kind of how they do their like coding and what their kind of thought processes are. So, that's something to keep in mind too, I guess, is especially when you're first going into industry.
But not enough of a downside to go into the office at a new job.
No. I mean, definitely not for me.
When beginning a new project, what is the process you go through to make sure you get the end goal delivered on time?
Well, this is obviously important for consulting companies. It also happens to be a very challenging problem for some of these various engagements. Some of the things we can do around that are, scoping the project, making sure that, what we're trying to deliver is reasonable for that timeline.
He does know that converting the whole platform to middle out has put us at least 6 weeks behind schedule, right?
So, we're not saying we're going to do whole migration in a month, and these things typically take, they can take years.
I just heard you tell Heidi we're 6 weeks behind. But remember that drop frame issue I showed you? We're easily 15 weeks behind.
So scoping, managing expectations is also important. What are they kind of expecting in this timeline versus maybe you have to talk to them a little bit about what's actually realistic.
Well, I'm not going to be the one to tell Heidi about that.
Feel free to tell her yourself.
And kind of finding that middle ground there a little bit. Yeah, I mean, there's some things you just can't account for in some cases, and just being able to be kind of agile and, kind of pivot if you need to, something comes up where it's like, we thought this might take a week, but it's going to take months, then you might need to rethink like your strategy and communicate.
I know, Jared, I know.
And make sure everyone knows what they need to do to pivot and get it done on time.
What does communication with the clients look like? Are you in meetings, emails, phone calls? When you say you got to communicate with people, how do you literally go about doing that?
Some of it depends on the client and kind of their company culture. Some companies, really focused on like kind of asynchronous communication through like Slack and Teams. Others are more kind of like video call kind of clients. So, there's definitely some degree of like, if they don't ever read their email.
I don't really want to dig through my inbox.
I'm not going to send them emails. I'm going to communicate over like Slack. A lot of times, like, I find that like email communication happens when we need to have a record that something happened and that we did something at the time that we said we were going to do.
So if you send it now, it'll be on top.
And, maybe, you send out an email saying, hey, this is done. It's out of our hands. It's on you to kind of review it at this point in time.
I've already sent them to you 5 times.
Kind of becomes, and that's kind of one of the use cases where we use email a lot. And then, Slack is more of those, more frequent kind of updates, maybe daily kind of summaries of like what we've done. And then, maybe team syncs through Zoom, maybe bi-weekly, depending on like on the project and kind of how we have it set up.
How do you go about learning new information at your job?
Especially consulting too, no two cases are exactly the same. So there's always kind of things to like figure out there. And then, obviously technology is just kind of moving fast in general. So, every month it seems like there's multiple new kind of frameworks to doing different things. Be prepared to, always be learning new things and to, always have to learn new things too.
How do you learn them? Like, what do you use? What sources, tools?
So as far as like learning new things, I think it's evolved a little bit over time. So when I was maybe newer to the field, I would learn a lot of things from like YouTube videos. It was kind of my primary source of like, okay, I literally just need you to show me how to like walk through it step by step.
Like a little baby.
And then I feel like from there, for a moment, I was kind of like more getting like different books and stuff on different subjects, kind of learning more through like books, still like a little bit more like guided, I guess. And now, my primary source for learning new things, since a lot of what I do is, with various like technologies and like open source libraries, I just go kind of to the documentation itself, and that's kind of the quickest way to like, for me to like start using a new technology, is, read their documentation and, if you have that context already of maybe some of the other pieces that you need, you bring that knowledge and it makes it so you can, learn these things just by reading the documentation and like a lot quicker than, now it's like, I've never sit through like a whole like hour-long YouTube video.
Like a little baby.
To like write some Go code. Whereas like, definitely a few years ago, that's what I would have been doing just because I didn't have the concepts, as nailed down as I do now.
Was college worth it?
I mean, I think it would have been probably very tough to get a job without the degree. I could definitely see someone who was maybe more focused and knew what they wanted to do being like a little bit more worth it. But some of it's also just like the process. So it's like, at the time I thought I wanted to do more chemical engineering things. I didn't really kind of realize a lot of the like real chemical engineering work happens like on site, maybe you're on 12-hour shifts, maybe you're working nights. I have some friends doing that in the chemical engineering field still. It's certainly not all you can do, but that's where a lot of like our learning was around, was like, this is how you do things in a chemical plant. So, definitely it's kind of like a path, and, maybe it might not have been worth it, if I wasn't, kind of as privileged, not coming out with like a bunch of debt or anything. So, that's also a consideration if you are like, I want to make as much money as quick as possible, maybe, kind of self-teaching like a lot of coding stuff, and then trying to get a job at like a startup and hope you kind of build your skills that way might be more quicker time to delivery, I guess, on that front. So, for me, I'd say it's worth it, but, take a look at your own situation, I guess, if you're questioning.
Thanks for watching this special mini lecture and Q&A on professional development, career goals, how to figure out what you're doing, and really just hearing from a graduated working professional. I'll turn this into a series, so stay on the lookout for more of these Q&A videos from people across different fields. Until then, thanks, vibes.
It's kind of a language that can do just about anything, might not do everything that well, but it's a great foundation for pretty much anything you'd want to do. So if you're looking to get into somewhere where you're doing a lot of coding, on kind of the data engineering, machine learning side, learn some Python.